Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Mourning Brew, with me, your host, Lee Petcher. Be advised that this podcast deals with issues of the passing of a loved one and the dealing with grief. So if these issues are upsetting to you at the moment, please come back to us when you feel ready to do so. Remember, you are not on your own. Otherwise, pour yourself a brew, get comfy, and we'll begin. Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Mourning Brew with me, your host, Lee Petcher. How are you doing, guys? As I record this, it is Sunday the 8th of November, also known as Remembrance Day, a day where we remember those who have given their lives in both World War I and World War II. It's quite apt that I'm recording this episode today because my mum was an avid supporter of Remembrance Day, buying poppies and doing her bit to make sure that we never forget. And it's also quite apt that tomorrow, the 9th of November, is Clint's birthday. So I will be remembering him as well. Also just gone past is Halloween, which again was my mum's favourite holiday. She, like myself, never really enjoyed Christmas that much. I mean, I enjoyed the presents, don't get me wrong, but something about the whole Christmas tradition, it just never really sat right with me. And I know why that is. It was down to fights. That's when the big arguments would usually start around Christmas. So yeah, I'm not a massive Christmas fan. So all those people that are playing Christmas music at the moment and putting the trees up, it's way too early. 1st of December, I'll allow it. But until then, no, it's not for me. So yes, this episode is going to be another long one. I can already feel it in my bones. And it's about my mum. But before I go into that, again, I just want to check in with you guys, see how you are all doing. At the time of recording this episode, in England at least, we have gone into lockdown number 2, and it's becoming darker and colder. And, now's the time to just check in with everyone and see how everyone is doing. Usually around this time, going into the winter months, is where a lot of the older generation tend to pass because of the heat. And again, with things that are going on, it's scary to think that they may be passing alone. I just saw a video on Facebook earlier of this woman with dementia who cried because her family weren't allowed in to see her. And that's heartbreaking, man. And as much as I follow the rules, I wear a mask, I socially distance from other people, I do think that, in times like that, some leniency should be given. I saw another video of a qualified nurse taking her mum out of a nursing home to look after her, being arrested. I mean, guys, come on, show some compassion. I want to, at the beginning of this episode, before we delve right in as well, just mention my handles. It's at The Mourning Brew on Twitter and Instagram. Facebook.com/The Mourning Brew and themorningbrew@gmail.com. Please get in touch. And if you're listening to this on Apple, leave a review, leave a rating. It just helps get the message out there and helps people who feel like they're going through this alone. Because remember, no one has to go through this alone. There's always somebody there. And if it's me, it's me. I'll do my best to help wherever I can. On the back of last week's episode of my dad, I must admit I was nervous getting it out there because of the content that was portrayed in that podcast. I thought some people might take offense to it. I thought some people might fall out with me because of it. And I received nothing but praise and thanks for being so open and honest. A couple of people said I was sitting there listening to you and I was hoping that you wouldn't just paint it all as roses, because it wasn't like that. And people tend to do that when they lose a loved one. They tend to paint just a positive picture about absolutely everything. And then they feel guilty when they do remember the bad things. It's like they're dishonouring the dead. And I'm here to say, no, not at all. You can love somebody with all of your heart. But no one's perfect. God knows I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. And the people who have gone, they weren't perfect. Nobody has led a perfect life. So when you remember the bad things that have happened, don't dwell on it. I'm not saying dwell on it and try to remember it, but take stock. Remember it for a reason. try and figure out why it's come back to you at that particular moment in time. Maybe it's trying to teach you a lesson, but learn from it and move on. And if you have to say, I love you and I forgive you, then do that. That was the main lesson from last week. And, I've got a lot of praise from my family and I want to just send them all my love back because it means a lot that you're listening and that you're going through this with me as well. So I was speaking to my brother yesterday and he said, Lee, I'm not going to lie. I don't listen to it in the morning, like you say it should be, Mourning Brew, and I don't listen to it with a cup of tea. And it's like, no, it's called the Mourning Brew, spelt Mouring, as in putting the U back in morning. It's not that you have to listen to it in the morning at all. Listen to it whenever you want. And the best thing about it being a brew is that, yeah, it could be a cup of tea. But as far as I'm aware, the Americans call a beer a brew as well. So whatever brew you like, please make sure you've got one and you're settled in. And again, guys, if you feel like you need to turn off and come back to this at a later time, that is absolutely fine. I'm going to struggle my way through this one. I cried last episode for my dad. This one's going to hit a bit harder, I think. So let's delve straight into it because it's going to be another long one. So this week's episode is all about my mum, Peta Lyn Petcher. Now, for a long time, that's what I thought her name was. I mean, she told me that. It was on her driving license. It was on her passport. It turns out that wasn't her name. That wasn't her given name. At birth, she was christened Doris Smith. And okay, I get that when you get married, you take on your husband's name, so that, solves that issue of Petcher to Smith. But Doris to Peta Lyn, it's a bit of a change, isn't it? But I'll get to that. So whether you know her as Potty Dotty or Peta or Peter, because a lot of people couldn't quite understand what Peta was, or Petra. A lot of people called her Petra after the blue Peter dog. So whether you knew her as Doris, Peta, Petra, Peter, whatever, this one's for her. She was born on the 24th of February, 1951, and she died, get this guys, she died New Year's Day, the 1st of January, 2019. Now, New Year's Eve, 2018, I went to go and watch my girlfriend / fiancée sing. She's a singer and she had a gig. So I went to support her. Now, my mum, as I mentioned, wasn't a big Christmas fan. She wasn't a big New Year's fan either. She didn't stay up and count it in or anything like that. So she'd go to bed quite early. So I made sure that I got my phone call in with her before the lines got busy. And we just had a nice chat and it was lovely. There was nothing wrong with her at all. Like there was nothing to be concerned about. As far as I knew, I was going to speak to her the next day. In fact, she even said that I'll speak to you tomorrow. And during my girlfriend's set, I started to feel emotional because back in 2019, it would have been the 10-year anniversary of my dad passing. So I was feeling all these feelings and I created a WhatsApp group with my brother and my mum partway through the night, and I just messaged them both going, let's do something nice for my dad this year. Let's remember him. It's been 10 years. And that was that. And then I woke up to the news. But again, that's jumping the story, so we'll get there. But needless to say, she was 68 years old when she died. The exact same age as my dad. 10 years between them in life, 10 years between them in death. It's a bit of a coincidence. Now, my mum's life wasn't easy, it turns out. She lost her dad when she was 22. I was 23 when I lost mine. She was 28 when she lost her mum, which baffles me. Yes, she talked about Grandma and Grandad Smith, and if you're just joining me on this episode, please go back to episode 2 when I go into all of this. But we never really spoke about how it affected her. And if I could go back now and just have one conversation with her, it would be about this. How did you cope? Can you give me any hints and tips of how I can continue? But in between her mum and her dad dying, she lost one of her sisters, Irene, when my mum was 24. Now, my mum, like me, was the youngest of 7. So the number 7 runs in our family quite a lot. And then she lost another sister when she was 65. There was only 3 years between Val passing and my mum. And I know Val's passing really affected my mum. My mum and Val were very, very close. In fact, that was the last time that I saw any of my family on my mum's side, was at my Auntie Val's funeral. So as far as I can tell, her upbringing was usual. She was always the prankster. But it turns out my mum was married twice before my dad. Again, very similar. My dad was married twice before my mum. Now, in her first marriage, as far as I can tell, it was amicable. He wanted kids. My mum was told she could never have kids. So my mum just thought it best to split. You know, there was no hard feelings there. She never really talked about him, barring that one story that I know. But the second marriage, this was abusive. And this is the reason why she had to change her name. She had to change her name from Doris to Peta Lyn. And again, I don't really know what was going on. But she split with him, changed her name and moved up north. And I'm glad she did. But I look at the parallels between that and the relationship she had with my dad. And I wonder why she stuck with my dad. Well, I say I wonder. She stuck with my dad because my dad gave her me. And I don't want to blow my own horn here, but I really was my mum's everything. Don't get me wrong, she would punish me if I did anything wrong. There was a time I swore in front of her when I was only a kid, and she dragged me outside in front of my friends and pulled my pants down, spanked my bum, and then made me put soap in my mouth to wash my mouth out. Like, when I'd do something wrong, she'd punish me. And I was always scared of upsetting my mum or letting my mum down. So there was always that side, but she wasn't harsh by any means. She loved me unconditionally. You know, I could do no wrong in her eyes, really. And I felt that pressure quite a bit. So my mum was a lorry driver. She was one of the first women lorry drivers around in England at the time. And that's where her and my dad met. She used to tell me that his handle on the radio was Bugalugs. And she used to call me Bugalugs when I was a kid, which was always nice. In fact, here's a funny story. She got banned from the services at Watford Gap because they didn't have female shower rooms at the time. But she'd been on the road all night and she needed a shower. She was sweaty and she needed to wake up. So she went into the men's, undressed and had a shower. But that was my mum. She didn't care. She just got stuff done. She was a fighter. She stood up for what was right. And I like to think that I've taken that from her. It turns out that her and my dad used to drive all over the place. And in fact, there was a story of them meeting the Yorkshire Ripper at one of the crossovers from France to England. So that's interesting. In fact, there's another story where my mum got my dad arrested for being the Yorkshire Ripper, but I won't go into that. They must have loved each other at one point. I mean, really loved each other. Because my mum doted on my dad and she would tell me all these stories about him playing gigs, how they met. And it sounded like they were really close at one point. But I never saw a romantic side from my dad. There were times when he'd surprise me. At Christmas, at the dinner table, he would always keep one present back from my mum and it would always be jewellery or something like that. But he wasn't a lovey-dovey, romantic kind of person. Their whole relationship just seemed a bit weird to me. And like I said in last week's episode, it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. He would go to the pub. And here's the thing, my mum would drink at home. Every time my dad was at the pub, she would drink a bottle of sherry. But whereas my dad was quite blasé and open with his drinking, he didn't hide it in any way, shape or form. My mum did. My mum hid bottles under the sink, in the cupboard. Even under my bed, I found them from time to time. And her reasoning was, well, if my dad's getting drunk, she'll get just as drunk and then they can have a good time. But it never worked out that way. One of them would wind the other one up and that's when shit would hit the fan, so to speak. And I could always tell. Like, my friends never knew when my mum was drunk, but I could tell. And I could tell when she'd phone me up years later and she'd been drinking. It's weird, I just knew. And I'd always get so disappointed. And I wouldn't care if she was out at the pub drinking with her friends or if she was out with me or my dad or whoever just joining in the conversation. But it's the fact that she hid it. I always thought she was an alcoholic. But I'm glad to say later in life she didn't drink anymore. She might have the odd tipple, but it was never that bad. My mum and dad got married in 1996, so I'd have been 11. And I remember always asking why they weren't married. So when me and my mum moved in with my dad, I was still Peter Lee Smith. And it wasn't until a few years later that my dad adopted me, so to speak. He took me down to town hall and he had to adopt me to be Peta Lyn Petcher. And it bothered me that I didn't have the same last name as my mum, because my mum had raised me. And I would pester my mum and I'd pester my dad, like, when are you two going to get married? When are you two going to get married? And I don't know if it was because of me. They did. They got married in 96. And I even gave my mum away. She used to joke that I couldn't wait to get rid of her and that I got really disappointed when she came back. And apparently, after the wedding, my mum had to adopt me back. So I am adopted twice. And from there, things were kind of the same. But my mum was great because it was always me and my mum. My dad was out working or down the pub or jamming with his friends, or he was hardly around, which I don't blame him for. He worked hard and we never went without. But it was usually just me and my mum. And my mum was very, very creative. Before I moved in with my dad and I'd have a birthday, she would always make it a fancy dress party and she would make the best costumes. And when I was at school and there was a school production or anything, she'd make the costumes for that. One night I remember telling her about my dream home. This is how big my dreams were when I was a kid. I just wanted a semi-detached house with a garage attached to the side of it via a door and up a fireman's pole. That's about it. But she went away and made it for me so that I could play with my action figures in this house. She made me the first Tracy Island before Blue Peter even told people how to create it. She was just amazing at things like that. And again, never wanted me to go without. In fact, one summer, I don't know if she was bored or what, but she convinced the entire street that we lived on to play along with this practical joke where they were all aliens. And when they bumped into each other throughout the day or night, my mum and everybody on the street would start talking in gobbledygook. And I was like, what's going on? And she told me that they were aliens and that they were here on Earth just looking for life to experiment on, and that I was a prime suspect. And it went on for the entire 6 weeks of summer, and she had me convinced that I was going to get abducted by aliens. When I think about it, my mum was pretty mean to me. But she was fantastic. She always played with my friends. She always included them. When my best friend, Johnny, when his mum passed, he became my brother from another mother. She just adopted him. She adopts everyone. All the grandkids that my stepbrothers and sisters have, again, they were hers. There was no step about it. She made sure that when I went to school, I told people I had brothers and sisters, not half, not step, because she just loved everyone unconditionally. Our Joe, my nephew, his birthday is the 2nd of November, and my mum would throw a Halloween party incorporated into a birthday party for him. There's nothing she wouldn't do, and her imagination just ran wild. One day at school, it was first school, Lowmore First School, and we were all going away on a trip, and we had to put our initials on the board for who could go. And I was looking at these initials, and I was seeing these really cool names like JD, JR, people's nicknames that are just their initials. Mine was just PL or LP. It's like, that's not cool. So I went home and I asked my mum, like, Mum, why don't I have any cool initials? She's like, well, you do if you use all your initials. I was like, what do you mean? PLP, what's that? She said, no. She said, your name's Peta Lyn Oliver Petcher. I was like, I've never been called Oliver. She's like, no, it's your name. I was like, yeah, but what's that? PLOP, Plop. Basically, my mum called me Plop. I told you, my mum was mean, but I loved her. When I was in upper school, my mum and dad started taking holidays away together, which was nice, spending more time together. But it was during the school term, so I couldn't go. And I stayed with a friend for, I don't know if it was a week or 2 weeks. And off my mum and dad went. And as far as I can tell, they had a really nice time. But when they came back, a lot of problems with my mum started. It turns out she'd got Raynaud's disease. Now, if you don't know what Raynaud's is, go look it up. But basically, it's a lack of circulation or circulation problems to your fingers and your toes. And it meant that my mum's fingers would go purple, blue, green, and they would just be ice cold. Now, at the time, there wasn't that many cases in England of Raynaud's disease. So my mum was in and out of hospital. Jesus, too many times for me to count. There'd be weeks where it was just me and my dad living at home, and we'd have to go. I say have to like it was a commitment. God, you don't have to go and see your mum, do you? You get to go and see your mum. So we'd used to go, and sometimes she'd be on a ward, sometimes she'd be in a private room, and she'd always be hooked up to this drip. And no matter how hard it got for her, she made everybody on that ward laugh. She made everyone feel happy. Not all the time, but genuinely, she was just this positive beacon of energy to be around. The nurses spent all their time around my mum's bed because, she'd give them sweets and drinks and just chat to them and make them feel special, like they should be. The doctors loved coming round and spent extra time with my mum. The patients just couldn't help but interact with her and just join in. Like, my mum wouldn't leave anybody out. Even you find miserable people on wards every now and again who just want to be left alone. And my mum was really good at reading people. She'd leave them alone when they wanted to be, but she'd bring them into the conversation when they secretly wanted to, but would never dare tell anyone. And when I'd go see her, she'd go, right, go over there, see Alice. Go sit next to Alice for a bit and have a chat with her. Or George next door, he's really into acting. Go speak to George. And it's like, Mum, I'm here to see you. She's like, yeah, just go and speak to them. And I found out that she was doing it because these people, they didn't have family coming to see them that often. And she was teaching me that you treat everyone with kindness and love. And she knew that she was always going to have my love. But if she could just cheer these people up just for 5-10 minutes, just by sharing me with them, then it'd be worth it. But that's where all my mum's medical problems started. They tested her for everything. And the more that she was in, the more her immune system broke down and she caught loads of stuff. She was very poorly and she'd never be right again. And then a few more years, she got diabetes, asthma, and just watching this strong, energetic woman slowly, and I mean slowly, deteriorate, it killed. But she wouldn't let it stop her, even through to the end when she moved to Louth after my dad passed. She became vice chair of the committee and she was the loudest one in the bingo hall. She made friends with everyone. She would pull jokes. She was just the life and soul of the party. She decorated her house for Halloween. The kids loved it, going round, getting sweets. She always had dog treats and cat treats in a jacket because she loved animals just as much. God, she'd do anything for anyone, even to her own detriment at some points. There was times she'd phone me up and she was like, Lee, such and such needs a ride to the hospital tomorrow. And I said I'd do it. I just can't. It's like, Mum, you need to take time for yourself. You need to slow down. It's all right. Like, let them look after you because you're not well. Yeah, but they're not well. No, but they're better than you, Mum. You chill. And she never wanted to admit that she was sick. There were people in her life that would try and story top her. My mum got diabetes, so other people got diabetes, but their diabetes was worse. It's like, it frustrated my mum, but she never wanted to make a big deal out of her illness. She apologised for it all the time. The Christmas before she passed, she was having a lot of issues with one particular doctor, so she asked me to go along with her. And so me and my fiancé now took her to a hospital appointment and we tried to get to the bottom of it. And all she could do was apologise, and she had to walk slow when she was walking. It was never a burden. And because of all these issues when my mum passed, it's complicated to explain. She had issues breathing and things, and we'd asked to get them checked, and she was getting passed from pillar to post. So when my mum passed, I asked for an autopsy because if there was anything anyone could have done sooner, I wanted to know about it. But anyway, that's jumping ahead again. This is what I do with my mum. I want to tell you everything all at once. So her health was deteriorating and she couldn't do what she used to do. So my mum and dad retired to the coast, to Mablethorpe. And they were happy there, I like to believe. And then when my dad passed, it really affected my mum. And I can only imagine now, like both her mum and her dad had passed and now my dad's passed and kind of feels like everyone's leaving her. And she struggled. But we got her into a gated community in Louth. I don't know if it's gated. It was one of those communities where you had a pulley lever if anything was to go wrong. So I knew that she was independent, but she was around people if needed. And, you know, the warden would always come and check on her. So I knew that she was in good hands. And she met her best friend there. She, as far as I could tell, she never found anybody else, which upsets me a little bit. I wish she had another person in her life, but maybe she didn't need him. I mean, everybody was in her life. She loved everyone, so... And she had the cat, Misty, which was the last present my dad ever bought her. My dad was not an animal person, so on the Christmas before he passed, he asked me to get a cat for my mum, and I did, which we all found a bit strange. But she loved that cat like her own daughter. And Misty was amazing. There was times when my mum had 2 mini strokes in her life, and every time Misty was there to pull on the cord. So, you know, Misty saved her life more than once. But my mum's mental health, she kept things from me. To an extent, it wasn't until one Christmas when she came up to Bradford to visit me that she admitted she tried to commit suicide. Now, guys, please, if you ever feel like that, talk to someone, talk to me, anyone, reach out, because what I told my mum is what I'll tell you. I would rather spend an hour listening to all your problems than half an hour at your funeral. That really upset me. I thought me and my mum could tell each other anything. And the fact that she kept that and she hid it well, I can only imagine what she was going through. So please, don't keep things bottled in. It's not good. Please remember there are people here that love you, that care for you. And you may not think it, but there are. Just talk to people. Depression isn't an ugly word. Mental health isn't a taboo subject. We need to end this stigma now. Mental health is just as important as physical health. Talk to people. Go to therapy. Go to group. Go for a walk. Do the things that you need to do. Meditate. I've started meditating this year. I wouldn't say I'm an expert at it. I get distracted every 5 seconds sometimes, but I try because I know that my mental health is so important. If I'm not right up here, I'm not going to be right for anybody else. And there are other people that depend on me. So please don't think you're alone. So that knocked me for 6. And then I tried to get as close to my mum as I could. It's hard when I lived in Bradford, living with my girlfriend at the time, trying to be an actor, working, and my mum living in Louth. She was never going to move back to Bradford. She had too many friends back in Louth, and I understand that. I couldn't move to Louth because I had too much going on in Bradford. It doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't make her a bad person. But I could have spent more time. I could have visited her more. I could have called her more. I mean, what's a phone call? At the times, I'm sure I thought it was inconvenient, but what I wouldn't give now to have that phone call. That's going on from my dad dying through to my mum dying. There are always times when I thought I should go visit her more, but I don't have a car. I don't have enough money for petrol. I've got work in the morning. I can't just take time off work. I'll call her more. But my mum got into this terrible habit of repeating things. She'd tell me something, and then she'd tell me again, and she'd tell me again. Not only every time that I called her, but 2 or 3 times that conversation. And it got annoying. And it did. But Jesus, what I wouldn't give to have her repeat something time and time again now just so I can speak to her. You know, if you've not spoken to someone that you really love in a long time and you're putting it off until tomorrow, please don't. I'm lucky that I got to speak to my mum the night before she passed. But that's because it was New Year's Eve when I would have called her anyway. If it had been another time, maybe I wouldn't have been so lucky. So don't put off speaking to someone. Drop them a text. Now, me and my mum were good at texting. We'd text each other quite a bit, and she'd send me videos and stupid stuff that at the time, I wasn't interested in. But I've kept them all now, and I look back on them sometimes just because it's got a voice in the background. You know, and it's what I was saying last time about pictures and videos, and now I know mums are notoriously bad for this. Mums are the ones that are behind the camera taking the photos of the children, of the dad and the children. They're very, very rarely in the photos. In fact, my mum would do anything to avoid being in photos or avoid being in film. And if this is you, please swallow your pride and just be in the photos, be in the videos. You don't have to look perfect. You don't have to sound perfect. In fact, it's better if you don't, because that's how your child sees you, or that's how your loved one sees you. More often than not, they don't see the perfect version of you dressed up to the nines and all that. They see you as you, and that's what they love, and that's what they want to remember. So get in those photos, get in those videos. There was a time where I'd moved to Manchester, and my sister had come back into my mum's life. That's an awkward relationship. My sister was pregnant with her youngest, the same time my mum was pregnant with me, so they formed a strong bond. And about the time that my mum and dad was getting married, my mum wanted to ask my sister to be her bridesmaid. But my grandma told my sister that my mum and dad were getting married before my mum had chanced her, and there was a big, massive argument, and she fell out, thinking that we were keeping things from her. She fell out with us again after my dad died because of the recording of my dad's birthday that I'd handed out to everyone. But because she was there for my mum, I wanted my mum to give my sister this one just to say thank you. And again, she thought we were keeping things from her. But anyway, she'd come back into my mum's life in a good way, and I was very happy about this. And she phoned me up one day whilst I was at work, and she'd made me believe that my mum was dead. And I had to leave work and I had to get down there, and basically my mum had had a fall. And it wasn't as bad as she made it out to be, but she made me feel like crap. And from there, me and my sister never spoke again. Not properly. But her and my mum got on until, I don't know, something happened. The story I'd been told is that my sister had taken my mum to a hospital appointment and my mum smoked in the car and they fell out. I don't know if that's the whole truth or what, but yeah, she cut all ties with us at that point. You know, and that was sad for my mum as well. But it was about that time, again, where I realised I need to be there more for my mum. I need to stop these excuses. When you look back at your life, are you going to think, thank God I was available for all those auditions? Thank God I watched that TV programme? Or are you going to go, thank God I was there for my mum? Now, my mum was the biggest supporter of me becoming an actor. She really was. My dad, like I said last episode, was more interested in me becoming a banker. But when I told my mum that, you know, I was going to follow my dreams after my dad died, because I realised life is too short to be in a job that I hate. When I told my mum that I got my first acting job, she could not have been prouder, and she would tell everyone. And the reasons that I wasn't going to see her was because I was on tour or I was filming or this, that and the other. And just hearing myself say it back now is just bullshit. I mean, it's not bullshit, it was there, it was true. I was on tour, I was filming, but I could have done more. There was a tour after me and my girlfriend split up, and I would write her a letter and she'd write me a letter back. And then I'd get the whole team that I was on tour with to write her little lines and things. And yeah, everyone just fell in love with her, Mama Petch. And we'd go visit her when we were touring near where she lived, and she'd make us this chili. My mum's chili was amazing. It's famous. And everyone just loved her. But I do wish I'd have stuck to the Sunday phone calls. I mean, I'm probably being harsher on myself than I need to be. Maybe I did hit every Sunday phone call, but you think, don't you? I should have made it every Sunday and Wednesday. I should have phoned her every night. I should have visited her every week. And there's always excuses not to, but I feel bad. I feel guilty. She knew I loved her, and that's what everybody said to me at a funeral. She was so proud of you. She knew you loved her. I just wish there was more I could have done for her. She confided in me that she always wanted to go on this cruise, and I promised myself that, you know, I'd save up and I'd send her on a cruise, and I never did. And the thing that gets me most of all is that even though she classed all of the grandkids as her own, I could never give her a blood one. And I promised her that. I wrote it into her last Christmas card. I promise you, I will give you a grandkid. And now that I'm engaged, I know that she would have been so happy. She would be phoning me up saying, don't forget to invite this person. Don't forget to invite that person. I'd be like, Mum, I don't even know them. No, but they're coming. And she'd be telling everyone, and she'd be looking for the best outfit she could have, and she'd be sending us gifts and ideas. My mum was always like that. She'd send us really random stuff. And I'm just sad she's not here to see it. And so on the 1st of January, I was in bed with my now fiancé, and we were planning the day. Emma had just had a brilliant gig. I'd messaged my mum and my brother about my dad, and I checked my message, but no one had read it yet. And I was like, oh, rude. But we were laughing and joking. And then I got a phone call saying that my mum wasn't breathing. And I'm like, what do you mean my mum's not breathing? She's like, I'm here. We've got into the house, but your mum's not breathing. I'm like, why are you telling me? Phone an ambulance, phone someone. And I started panicking. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Because bearing in mind the year before, I'd just had that message off my sister saying that, my mum was in a really bad way, led me to believe that she'd dead. I'm like, is this another one of them things? Like, of course I'm going to go down, but I need answers. And Emma said, okay, come on, let's get ready. Let's get some stuff together, and we'll start making our way down there. And then if it's nothing, at least we're there for your mum. And if it's something, then we can deal with it when we're down there. So we start getting ready. And just as we're about to set off, I get a phone call saying that the paramedics are there and they've tried everything, but she's gone. And I can't really remember what happened next, apart from me saying, right, I'm coming. And I think Iris said, do you want them to take your mum away now, or do you want to see her first? And I was like, no, I need to see her. Again, like I said in the last episode, unless you see it with your own two eyes, you're always going to doubt. I had to see her. And Emma said, okay, I'll drive. And I was like, no, I need to drive. I needed to drive. I needed to take my mind off something. I needed to concentrate on something other than what was going on. And if you find yourself needing to do things to distract yourself or to focus your mind, then do it. Don't do anything dangerous. Don't put yourself in harm's way. If you don't think you can drive, don't drive. But if that's what you need to do, then do it. And that's what I needed to do. And the drive down's a bit of a blur. It seemed to last forever. And I know I cried a couple of times, but because I was driving, I couldn't let myself be overwhelmed by the grief. I had to pull myself together. I had to get there. It was going back to my dad and being strong. I had to be strong. I had to get there. And we were not far from my mum's house when I got a phone call again, and Emma took it because I was driving. And they said that by law, they could only keep my mum where she was for a certain limit of time. And after that, they have to take her. And it was that time. So they took her. And when I pulled up onto her road, her house is the first thing you can see. It's a long street, but her house is right on the crossroads. And I started panicking, started hyperventilating. Like, things were starting to sink in. And we got parked up. And in the house was Iris, my mum's best friend. And this woman with these two kids, and I couldn't understand why they were there. And I think I walked past them and they said sorry, but I wasn't listening. And Iris just gave me a big hug and we just both cried. The house seemed so empty, and yet it was so full. And slowly people left. And I got a message from someone saying that because of the community that my mum was living in, the house had to be emptied in a month. And not just emptied, everything needed to go. The furniture, the carpets, the cooker, like, it had to be left a shell. So now I'm left with my mum who's passed, a funeral to organise, but I can't yet, and a house to clean and empty, and my mum's cat to find because Misty would not come in the house. And that was my January. Now, I was working at a cinema at the time, and my God, the difference between the cinema and the bank is like chalk and cheese. The cinema couldn't do enough to help me. They gave me compassionate leave, and they gave me as much time off as I needed, paid, and I can't thank them enough. And so I'm left with this task now of what do I do first? My mum's house was full of ornaments, So I guess that was the first thing we had to do, was just start wrapping and packing everything up and getting it in piles ready to take to charity shops. And Emma was great. She was there with me as much as she possibly could. It wasn't until a couple of weeks later, where she had to go back to work, and I fully understand, but she came down every weekend and was there for me for the weekend. And she was on the phone to me every night. And I got all these messages on Facebook and Twitter and email and texts. I guess it's nice to know that people think about you and that they care, but it might just be me. Guys, tell me if you feel the same way. I got sick of seeing sorry for your loss. I mean, it's what you say, innit? It's the first thing that you can think of. Oh, I'm sorry for your loss. Like, oh yeah, did you do this? Why are you sorry? Oh, they're in a better place now. Don't shove religion down my throat. You don't know that. No one knows that. Oh, they lived a long and she was 68. Don't tell me it was a long and happy life. And I started to get annoyed by some of these just cliched responses. It's like no thought went into it at all. Oh, I'm here if you need to talk. I'm like, dude, I've not spoken to you in 5 years. Why am I going to speak to you now? Why am I going to be so open and vulnerable to you now? What do you need me to do? I need you to bring my mum back. That's what I need you to do. But I couldn't say that to these people. They were trying. But I find myself trying to look after them, trying to counsel them as to how they're feeling about how I'm feeling. Do you know what I mean? So guys, if you know someone who's going through that thing, don't get them to counsel you. It's not fair. They need the help. If you don't know how to deal with what you're feeling, work on it yourselves. I know it sounds harsh and nasty, but please work on it yourself and be there for them, because that's what they need. Ask them how they're doing. Ask them and actually ask them and listen to their answer, because there are days they're going to be fine. And then you can change the subject and move on. And then it doesn't have to be awkward. And there'll be days when they're really, really struggling. And if they're struggling, do you know what? It's going to be hard. It's going to be awkward for you. Just deal with it because you asked. Otherwise, don't ask. Yeah, I know you want to be there. I get it. But be there in the right way. And as I said before, because of my mum's complications and because it was New Year's Day, there wasn't a lot that could be done with my mum's body. It had to go to someone first. And then they had to decide whether it was going to go for an autopsy or not. But again, it was the holidays and they weren't open. So that delayed things. And then when they finally did get in touch with me, they were like, oh, I've got some bad news. I'm going to have to recommend an autopsy. And I was like, that's good news. I need that. But what it meant was that for 3 weeks, I didn't get to see my mum. I didn't get proof. And I would lie in bed every night or be in a house every day and I would just imagine her coming in. I didn't know. I thought she was coming back. I prayed she was coming back. I hoped that everything I was doing was wrong and I just had to unwrap it and put it all back. Nothing would have given me more pleasure. 3 weeks is a long time without seeing your loved one. I mean, I wasn't there for her death. They wouldn't wait for me. They couldn't wait for me to get there. And I needed that certainty. I needed it. And until we got the body back, I couldn't really plan the funeral. So I was left in this weird state of limbo. And I had to look after Misty and get Misty down for a vet appointment. And I had to empty this house. And to be fair, the place where she was living were great with me. They put me up in this room because I couldn't sleep in the house. You know, and everyone gathered round and helped where they could. Now, when my dad died, he left us nothing. He didn't have anything. It was not a bad thing. But I said to my mum there, and I said it to her a few times, like, please get some kind of life insurance. Get a funeral plan in place so I know. I know it's awful. It's a hard conversation to have, but please have something in place. The year before she passed, she said that she was looking into something. I mean, that's 9 years that she's not done anything, but that's by the by, she said she was. And I remember her saying that, so I bottomed that house trying to find something to help pay for the funeral, because funerals aren't cheap, but she didn't. The only thing I knew about my mum was she wanted to be cremated and that she wasn't that religious. So when the funeral directors start asking you all these questions and you just don't know the answers to, if you take anything away from this episode, guys, please let it be this. Have a plan in place. Now, you don't have to have that awkward conversation if you don't want it, but write it down and tell whoever where those plans are. So when that time comes, it's all in one place. And it's such a relief. You know, I was telling a lot of people about this as it was happening. And my fiance's mum and dad turned around to me and went, that's what we're doing. because of you, we're putting plans in place. And it's not pleasant, but it just makes the hardest time of your life a little bit easier knowing that things are sorted, because I was panicking. I couldn't have my mum not have a funeral. I mean, I don't know if it's luck or what, but in 2014, I was knocked off a moped, and in about 2018, I finally got paid out, and it was that money that I spent on my mum. And I was never not going to spend it on her. That was never a question. But if I hadn't have had that, who knows where I would have been now. And I want to give a massive shout out to Johnny again. He was always at the end of the phone and always there for me if I needed anything. Emma, obviously, there was nothing that girl wouldn't do for me. She used to travel up and down. There was one day that I needed the car. So I was down with the car in Louth, and Emma was at work and she had to get a train to come down. And it was really snowy, like it was a blizzard. And it was really icy. And I got into a tiny, tiny car crash. But it was just the one thing I didn't need. Now it was 1 o'clock in the morning. No one was around. No one saw it happen. I could have easily drove off. But I was knocking on people's doors, trying to find out whose car it was, if I could borrow a pen and paper or something just to leave a note, because it's the right thing to do, and the right thing is always the right thing, I don't know that this person isn't going through as bad of a time as I am at this point, and they wake up in the morning and see that their car's got a bit of a scratch on it, then that could be the thing that tops them off. But yeah, Emma was there for me, and a really good friend of mine, Ross, he recommended me to this group, 500 Acts of Kindness. 500 members pay £1 in a week, and then every week they choose who this 500 goes to. And Ross recommended me to this group, and they raised more than £500 for me because my money was depleting. Obviously, I was paying rent and bills at home and trying to keep things going down at my mum's and the funeral and everything, and they really came through for me. So guys, please check them out, 500 Acts of Kindness. And I joined the group shortly after that, because what they did for me, I only hope I can do for someone else. But it was a weird time. I can't even describe it. Having to empty your mum's house of all her memories, all the photos, all the videos, all her clothes, and try and plan a funeral where you can't actually plan anything. Now with my dad's, we went for a family-run funeral home. But with my mum, I used a corporation. And the difference, again, was like chalk and cheese. I felt like this corporation just didn't care at times. Like they were just humouring me. They just wanted me in and out the door. They just wanted my money, and then that was it. I had to choose a package that I could afford, but it just meant that I couldn't get a lift to the crematorium. And that was the only thing I needed. I was like, can I not just pay £100 extra for a car that will take me there because I can get a lift back? I just need to get there. And they were like, no, the next package that includes that is £1,000 extra. Like £1,000 for a car. I could buy a car. It's a business, isn't it? Death is a business, and that's sad. People profiting off other people's loss. But luckily, I got a lift there. And the funeral's a bit of a blur as well. I didn't want anybody wearing black tie. And because I didn't really know my mum's life that much, again, I had to ask for help off my Auntie Carol to get stories for the humanist to say. And I spoke at my mum's funeral. It just seemed to happen so fast, And I was annoyed. Some people on my mum's side of the family they weren't there for the funeral. Now I know traffic. I get it. I understand. They weren't there. And my mum really wanted them there, and I really wanted them there because my mum loved these people. And other people had come down the night before and stayed over. Some people set off really early to be there. And in my own head is, if you want to be there, you'll be there. And if you don't, you'll make an excuse. Now, they were there at the wake afterwards, and it was nice to see them, but it had upset me, especially knowing that my mum would have done anything for these people to be there. And I'm sorry if you listen to this and it upsets you. I've said from day one I'm going to be open and honest, and that's what I'm doing. Now, with my mum's death, I didn't go so far as what I did with my dad. I'd learned from that mistake. I wasn't drinking a bottle of whiskey every night. I did have a few beers, more than I'd usually have, and I did eat a lot of takeaway, and I put on a bit of weight, but it was comfort eating and comfort drinking. And it's like I always say, you've got to do what you've got to do, man. You've got to do you. Whatever gets you through. And for me, it was a few beers on a night to take the edge off. takeaways because I couldn't be arsed cooking. And I found myself watching DVDs and just shit TV just to take my mind off stuff. When I got my mum's ashes back, I had to figure out what I wanted to do. With my dad's ashes, we scattered some at my grandma and granddad's headstone. My mum scattered some down the motorway because he was the lorry driver. And we sent some over to America because that was my dad's dream. And luckily, before he passed, he got to go on a trip to America. So we sent them to the friend that he had over there, and he went on their journey again and just scattered his ashes all over. But with my mum, it was up to me. So I took my time and really decided what I wanted to do, partly because I just didn't want her to leave. She was there in my home. And partly because I wanted it to be perfect for her. Maybe it was a way of redeeming myself, like I wasn't fully there when she was alive, so the least I could do was be fully there for her when she died. So I made the decision to take a week off and just scatter her everywhere that meant something. So we scattered some in Louth, where she spent her final days. She had a bench that she'd put a plaque on for my dad, so I got a new plaque made for both of them. And we put the bench in the community garden and we scattered some of my mum's ashes next to that bench. We scattered some in Bradford with my dad at my grandma and granddad's headstone. So if there's ever a time in Bradford and I want to go and feel close to them, they're both there. We too scattered my mum on the motorway so she could be on the road with my dad once again. We went to Mablethorpe and scattered my mum at sea there. I went to Stoke and scattered my mum by my grandma and granddad Smith's headstone. I'd never been there before, so I got to meet them for the first time, and she got to be with her mum and dad. And then we took a trip to Portsmouth and scattered the majority of her ashes there. That's where she was born, and that's where she wanted her ashes scattered so she could be with her dad. And again, every one of those trips killed me a little bit. I've got some of my mum's ashes, and I found my dad's ashes when clearing out my mum's house, and they're still on the mantelpiece in my home as we speak. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be there forever, but they're there now, and I speak to them every day, and that's a comfort. But I guess the thing that gets me is that they don't have a headstone between them. Not one spot where I can go and visit. I mean, there's all these places I can go and visit, and that's great. But it's like I was saying in the last episode, with graves, after a time, people do stop visiting anyway. So maybe a headstone is just selfish, something for me, for where I want to go. I think what I'd like to do is plant a tree somewhere and use their ashes as part of the embedding for that, because then we're helping future generations, and there's a place that I can go to remember them, and I can tell other people where that tree is and they can go and visit them. But hopefully that tree will last forever and just help wildlife and be a place for kids to climb and have fun. I struggled after my mum died, more than I let people know. I did have to go see a therapist, but there are times it still comes back. Every so often, and it was more in the beginning, I would lay in bed at night, and before I'd go to sleep I would say, please, don't let me wake up in the morning. I don't want to be here in the morning. Let me go in my sleep. Now, I wasn't suicidal, didn't want to hurt myself, wasn't ever going to do anything like that. I just had nothing left to live for at this point. At least I didn't feel it. It was me and my mum in the beginning, and now it's just me. My best friend had gone, and I didn't want to carry on without her. I felt that everything that I was doing since my dad died was to make her proud, and I feel like I let her down. And I got all these platitudes from people saying, gotta do it for your mum now. Your mum would be so proud. Your mum would want you to carry on. But it didn't matter to me. I wanted her. And yes, occasionally it still happens. I'll have a quiet word to myself going, this is it, this is it. But again, I'll never do anything about it. I just feel empty inside. I miss her so much. And as bad as it may seem, I'm kind of used to my dad not being here anymore. Doesn't make it easier, but I guess it's been 10 years. I don't want to get used to my mum not being here. I don't want to not think about her. And gradually, life gets back to normal. You go back to work and things just carry on. Life just goes on. I found, more so after my mum's death, that I was less tolerable of people's bullshit. With my dad, I learned that I didn't want to be in a job that I hated, so I did everything to get out and get my first professional acting gig. With my mum, I just couldn't deal with people whinging and whining about petty things. And now in customer service, that's kind of your job. You have to get used to that. But I couldn't. And again, the cinema was brilliant. They put me primarily on ushering duty where all I had to do was just clean the screens. And that was great. It was mind-numbing. It was not tasking. I didn't have to think about anything. I didn't have to pretend to be someone else. If I was having a bad day, I was having a bad day, and that was great. But I knew I couldn't deal with somebody complaining about the wrong popcorn that they've got, or that the cheese is too hot, or that they asked for 2 salsa, 1 cheese instead of 2 cheese and 1. It just didn't matter to me. One guy kicked off at me once and I just snapped, because in the grand scheme of things, your petty problems mean nothing. I just wanted to say, I've lost my mum and you're complaining about this. Be kind to whoever you interact with on a daily basis, guys. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know what battle they're fighting that day. They could have just lost someone, and your shitty attitude to them is the reason why they're being shitty back to you. Just be kind. The week my mum died, you have to do this thing where you tell people that they've gone. And with Facebook and things like that now, it's a little bit easier to get the message out there. But there are some people that you want to tell first. And now I know me and my sister hadn't spoken in a long time, but I knew they were close at one point, and she cared enough for my mum to scare me when I thought that she'd died the first time. So I wanted to tell her. I wanted to be the one to let her know. And guys, this is where my family's fucked, man. I couldn't get hold of her on her phone. She'd blocked me on Facebook and things like that. So I got in touch with her daughter, my niece, and I let her know. And the response I got back was, "Yeah, we know. Stop bothering us now." And the response I got from one of my other brothers was, "I'm reporting you to the police." It was me and my mum at the beginning, and it was me and my mum at the end. I'm surprised I've got through this one without crying. I guess I've still got a lot of anger to get over, which is fine. I'm not angry at my mum. I'm not even angry at my brother and sister or any of the family. I guess I'm angry at the situation. I'm angry she's not here. There are times I still go to call her, and I have to catch myself. I've not been able to delete her number from my phone yet. It took me a while to be able to delete my dad's. I always said, I don't know what I'd do without my mum, and I'm still trying to figure it out. People used to pick on me at school, calling me a mama's boy. I am. I'm not ashamed to admit that. So guys, that's been episode 5 of the Mourning Brew. And that's everything from my grandparents through to Clint, to my mum and my dad. So I'm trying to figure out what to do next. I might do a question and answer session where if you guys have any questions whatsoever about anything that's been spoken about in the past 5 episodes, get in touch with me on Facebook. That is facebook.com/The Mourning Brew, or Twitter and Instagram at The Mourning Brew. Just slide into my DMs, or email me, themorningbrew@gmail.com. And, again, I won't shy away from any question, and I will be as open and honest as I can be. And then we start bringing on some guests, so you can take a break from listening to my voice. Anyway, guys, that's been episode 5. I'm Lee Petcher. This is the Mourning Brew, putting you back into morning.